Warm greetings to everyone attending the fourth workshop on advances in open runtimes and cloud performance technologies. I'm going to talk about our project titled Improving Stack Allocation on Eclipse OpenJ9 using precise static analysis. This is being worked upon by Nikhil TR, Dheeraj, Swapnil Rustaki, and myself, Manas Thakur from IIT Mandi, Arjun Bharat and V. Krishna Nandiwala from IIT Madras, and Vijay Sundareshan, Andrew Craig, and Daryl Meyer from IBM Canada. When we talk about Java, we organize Java programs as classes and we declare objects or instantiations of these classes. The objects are passed some messages, based on them some methods are called and the actual computation happens. That's how we allocate objects in Java. Now, if let's say I represent an abstract object allocated at line number L in my source program as OL, given this notation, I could say that for the program on your right hand side where there is a method foo which allocates three objects new represented by new D here at lines 4, 5 and 6 respectively, I could refer to these objects as O4, O5 and O6 respectively. Another observation which we can make is that class C has a static field called G, and in the method bar which is being called from foo, what we are doing is we are assigning p.f to G. As a result, any object which is pointed to by p.f at this point of time, as it becomes reachable from a global variable, it can be accessed by other threads in parallel. So where do we allocate these objects? We allocate such objects in Java by default on the heap, right? Heap is just a part of the several different regions of memory in a program's execution. Like there is a memory for holding the program's code. There is a memory for holding static fields or global variables. There is a memory where we by default allocate the objects, and there is a stack which holds the activation records or stack frames of methods while they are executing. So by default, all the objects are there on the heap, and there is a garbage collector in Java which periodically clears out the objects which are not being referred to anymore. But garbage collection, though it's a very good thing to have, has its own overheads. Even if we talk about modern garbage collectors which run concurrently, they still compete with the application for resources, and sometimes we may even experience pauses for long running applications because of the garbage collector being in picture. On the other hand, the memory allocated on the activation record or the stack frame of a method gets freed automatically once a method finishes execution. Moreover, access to fields of objects on the stack is much more efficient than those on the heap. Given this background, the question we would like to take for the further discussion is that can we allocate objects on the stack? Because it's less expensive to access those objects fields, and because those objects need not be garbage collected at all. We reduce the garbage collectors overhead if we have more objects on the stack. The answer is yes, we can indeed allocate some objects on the stack based on the results of something called as escape analysis. Escape analysis tries to classify the objects in a given object-oriented program into two categories. One that escapes, the other category which consists of the objects that do not escape or which are local to a method or which are captured within the activation record of a method. So an object is said to escape if the method in which it is allocated, let's say, assigns it to a global variable, because of which now the object can no longer be or should no longer be cleared up when the method's activation record gets popped out from the runtime stack. So in order to perform escape analysis, we usually first compute something called as points to sets, which represent which variables and field references can point to which objects during execution. For this program, for example, if I compute the points to sets for various variables and field references, I could say that the reference X points to the object O4. So X points to O4, this is the notation. Similarly, Y points to O5. The field F of the object O4 points to O6 because of the store statement at line 6. Similarly, I pass on X to bar which maps to P. P is actually pointing to O4 here. And if I do P dot F and assign it to G, then essentially I'm making the object O6 being pointed to by the variable G. Based on these points to sets, now I can compute the escape analysis results for, let's say, the method foo. If I do that, I would find that the object O5 is just reachable from a local variable of foo. So O5 does not escape. The object O4, though it is being passed to bar by being pointed to X, in bar there is nothing happening with the object pointed to by the parameter P, which makes it escape. And hence O4 also does not escape. Object O6, on the other hand, it doesn't escape in foo, but is actually passed to bar where it's being assigned to the global variable G. And hence O6 escapes at line 10. Now, in order to compute such results, we need to actually perform quite a precise escape analysis. Let's see example. If I want to capture O4, as I mentioned, we need a points to graph, and then we need to perform a reachability test there to find if a variable is, if an object is reachable from only local variables or something from outside. So capturing O5 within foo requires an intra-procedural, but a reachability analysis involving points to relationships, which are usually represented as points to graphs. Capturing O4, on the other hand, requires an inter-procedural analysis. I need to peek inside bar and find out what is happening when I pass the object O4 to bar. Capturing O6, let us say I want to find out I want to realize the fact that O6 does not escape till the call to bar at line 7 in foo. Say I want to get this information, I need something called as a flow sensitive analysis. I need to, instead of saying an object escapes or does not escape, I want to also find out where does it escape. I want to maintain information for each program point based on the control flow of my program, and hence we need a flow sensitive analysis. However, performing such precise analysis during JIT compilation is usually not feasible. Why? Because the time spent in program analysis, as we know, adds up to the execution time of the program in a managed runtime like the JVM, where compilation actually happens while the program has started execution. Hence, typical JIT compilers can afford only imprecise analysis, let's say only intra-procedural, but not flow sensitive or inter-procedural and so on. If we consider this fact, then if we see what does the OpenJ9's Testarossa compiler do, the TR compiler can easily stack allocate O5 based on the current intra-procedural analysis which it performs, and sometimes it may be able to allocate O4, but not always. For example, if bar is a virtual call in a way that this call cannot be resolved to a single bar which can be called at this place, then the TR compiler might not be able to determine which bar it is, and it may not be able to peek inside the code of bar, and hence O4 might not be stack allocatable for this piece of code. Now, when we want to go ahead, we looked into the Java's translation mechanism again. We revisited Java's translation mechanism, where we know that a Java program is first compiled into bytecode or in the form of class files by a static Java compiler, and then these class files are actually either interpreted or just-in-time compiled by the Java virtual machine, right? So the current kinds of analysis we are talking about are performed in the JIT compiler. However, we can note that in Java, there are two places at which we can perform analysis: in the JIT compiler as well as in the static Java compiler. Building on this observation, in 2019, we had come up with an idea called as PI, precise yet efficient. It stood for precise yet efficient, and we published this framework for performing analysis in ACM Toplas in July 2019, and we had later presented it in the journal First Mode in OOPSLA 2019. The idea of PI was to add an analysis component in the static analysis, first thing, and second, reduce the burden of the analysis at the existing analysis component of the JIT compiler. So what PI does is it analyzes Java applications along with or after compiling them to bytecode. It similarly analyzes Java libraries offline. And as our application code may refer to library code and vice versa, we maintain dependencies among the different results, the static analysis results generated for the application and the library code. These dependencies are later on resolved during JIT compilation. So the idea is don't perform complex analysis during JIT compilation, offload them to static analysis where we can spend time in performing more precise analysis, and then whatever is left, the merging part, and if there is a scope to improve the results, that we perform in the JIT compiler. Essentially we get highly optimized code, or we tend to get highly optimized code without affecting the compilation time much, or sometimes even reducing the compilation time. So this we had this idea we had executed for a couple of pointer analysis in the paper mentioned above. Based on this, the idea of this current project is to use this idea, the idea of splitting the analysis between the static and the JIT compiler for performing stack allocation. So as the first step, what we could do is perform more precise. By more precise, I mean, let's say flow sensitive, interprocedural, context sensitive, perhaps, escape analysis over Java bytecode, say using the Suite analysis framework, which is a popular static analysis framework for Java programs. Store these escape analysis or precise escape analysis results in, say, either separate files like .res files as we have seen on the last slide, or perhaps as annotations in the class files themselves. Take these results along with the class files to the JVM file before execution, and then use these obtained results to perform stack allocation of hopefully a much larger number of objects during JIT compilation. That's the overall theme of this project. Now, easier said than done, there are several challenges here. I will highlight a few of them. When we analyze something statically and then we want to take those results to the JVM and process those results or refine those results or use those results, we need to make sure that we should have generated the static analysis results in terms of something which still makes sense in the JVM, right? For example, if I generate results in terms of source code variables, they are no longer present in the IR of the JIT compiler. So I cannot use those results. So we need a glue between the bytecode which we are analyzing statically and the JVM. And for this, what we use is something called as bytecode indices. What are bytecode indices? In class files, we have some indexes at which we write each bytecode instruction, and those indices are essentially what we call as BCIs. So the idea is to generate results in terms of these BCIs so that they are still usable in the JVM where we still have bytecodes and the indices available with us. The second challenge is to prevent unsoundness in presence of various dynamic features of Java, like dynamic class loading, hot code replacement. These things happen when the program is executing, right? Now we would have analyzed the static analyzer would have analyzed the program assuming some version of the program. And now if something gets replaced at runtime dynamically, then how do you make sure that the prediction which you had given for an object's escape status, does it hold true or not? Let me talk about the first challenge first. So as I said, we represent results in terms of bytecode indices. Let's see an example here. Here we have a small object, a method foo which allocates an object. And if we just see the bytecode generated for this method, we will see that this new statement is translated to a new bytecode, followed by a constructor call, followed by the reference being stored into the variable x, and then a return. So these orange numbers which you see are essentially bytecode indices. And as we can see here, the object being allocated here is essentially, we can represent the allocation site using the bytecode index BCI 0. So we represent escape analysis results in terms of such BCIs. For each object at a particular allocation site, we tell whether it escapes or doesn't escape. Now, one challenge is that starting JDK 8, Suite does not directly support BCIs. They have adopted a new ASM frontend which did not have a default way to maintain BCIs. So what we have done is we have extended Suite along with the ASM frontend to preserve these BCIs so that we can still generate results in terms of them for even current versions of Java and so on. Now, based on all this, the first theme on which we are working is called optimistic stack allocation. This is a novel idea. What we realize is that in presence of dynamic features, if we are using a static analysis to stack allocate an object, we might have to heapify that object. If, let's say, some code which the static analysis was not aware of comes into picture during program's execution due to a dynamic feature. Now, how do we do this? We first say that our static analysis results are not final answers. Let us treat them as hints to the stack allocator in the JVM. And then if we treat them as hints and go ahead with performing stack allocation of a certain object, we want to detect at runtime if we are storing a stack allocated object into a reference on the heap. For this, what we can do is we have write barriers associated with store instructions in the JVM. When we encounter such a barrier, we need to check whether a particular object which is currently allocated on the stack based on the hints given by the static analysis. Now, if that object is getting assigned to a reference which requires it to be on the heap, then we need to do something about it, right? What we need to do is we need to walk the stack, move the object back to heap, and dynamically correct the references which are pointing to that object. Though this looks costly, we hope that this won't happen often. We know that dynamic class loading and hot code replacement are not as common events during typical program executions, and hence, even though this mechanism looks like some extra job, we may not have to do it quite often at all, and hopefully we will get benefits by allocating a larger number of objects on the stack, which was not possible by performing an imprecise analysis during JIT compilation. If we consider our favorite motivating example again, we could see that the static analysis and interprocedural static analysis can easily tell that objects O4 and O5 can be allocated on foo stack, and we can go ahead with it based on this proposed idea of optimistic stack allocation. The second idea which we are working on is called split scalarization. Here we take advantage of the fact that take notice of the fact that accessing object fields from heap is expensive, whereas accessing local variables on the stack is cheap. So the idea is that what if an object cannot be stack allocated based on a typical escape analysis, but it cannot be stack allocated for its whole duration, for its whole lifetime. However, if we know at what precise point of time does it escape, and if we see that it's profitable to allocate that object on the stack before the point at which it escapes, then what we can do is we can scalarize the object. We can replace the object by its fields or by local variables till the point it escapes, and we can heapify that object or construct that object on the heap if and before the object actually escapes. And this can again be identified using several static analysis. The static analysis we would need, for example, is a flow sensitive escape analysis. We need to be able to identify at what exact point of time does an object necessarily need to be there on the heap. So if we consider this, then for the same piece of code, we can say that object O6 can be scalarized till the call to bar. We can assume that there are many more lines of code between lines 6 and 7 here, and the object need not be on the heap till the call to bar at line 7. That's the idea of split scalarization. So now let me present some very preliminary results of our static analysis and some more statistics on the JVM. Take this with a pinch of salt, because they are done on small pieces of code taken from the Java Grande Forum benchmark suite. And currently we do not analyze the JDK libraries, we just analyze these benchmark codes. We are still working on testing our static analysis with these small pieces of code, where we can just check what is going on if we find some issue. So here I have listed 11 benchmarks from the JGF suite with the number of class files without the JDK libraries or without the JCL Java class libraries for those benchmarks. And then we have mentioned in the third column in this table, I have given the memory overhead of the results, the static analysis results generated for those benchmarks compared to the class file size of those benchmarks. And as we can see, it ranges from 10 or 11% to 22%. On an average, 16 to 17% is the overhead, which arguably is not high. We can see also that the analysis time varies with the size of the benchmark. Larger the benchmark, more the number of methods, more the number of strongly connected components, we may spend more time analyzing those benchmarks. And these numbers typically are again not in a very high range. Further, as these are performed during static compilation, it's fine if even if we take a bit more time to perform a precise static analysis, if it gives us better answers in terms of stack allocatable objects. We also have some initial counts for the scope for performing stack allocation on OpenJ9. So what we did was we counted the number of allocation nodes which we found in the IR. Then we counted how many of those objects are actually allocated on the stack by the existing scheme. We found that it's quite low. Then we used our result files to see how many number of objects can be allocated on the stack if we use those static analysis result, and we found that we have some reasonable numbers over several benchmarks. What we found was, since these are small benchmark kernels, most of the methods were not even compiled. That's why we see several zeros here, for example, in the total number of alloc nodes themselves. So what we did was we forced the compilation of these methods so that the potential opportunity increases. We should probably be able to see what's the maximum we can achieve by running a benchmark for a long amount of time. And then we see the improvement here. We could allocate a large number of objects if we use the static analysis results. So we haven't yet allocated those objects on the stack based on these results, but these are tentative numbers based on the result files which we have generated for these benchmarks. So the proposed scheme, we can conclude that has a potential to allocate a large number of objects on the stack. Compared to the existing analyzer, since it's imprecise, it cannot afford to perform such a precise analysis during JIT compilation. So we won't add to the time consumed during JIT compilation, but we will hopefully get a large number of objects allocated on the stack with our ideas. So to conclude, stack allocation is quite a useful optimization for languages with managed runtimes. And the precision of stack allocation, or the number of stack allocatable opportunities, is determined by the precision of the escape analysis, the underlying escape analysis. JIT compilers cannot afford performing expensive escape analysis. However, for Java, we have an opportunity to perform static escape analysis, and that's what is our idea. We want to perform a precise analysis statically, get more objects allocated on the stack, and have a mechanism which can take appropriate steps in presence of something mischievous happening during runtime. So these two are the ideas. We are working more actively on the first one, optimistic stack allocation and heapification in OpenJ9. Then we have also started work on the idea of splitting the scalarization of those objects, or scalarizing objects over certain ranges if those objects cannot be allocated for their whole lifetime on the stack. Being a virtual event, it would have been good to meet all of you, but let me just show the team behind this work. So we have, these are the people who actually write the code on Suit as well as on OpenJ9. Nikhil is a student who was working on Suit till a few months back. He has graduated now. Right now we have Arjun, Dheeraj and Swapnil who are working on this project. And then obviously there are several people from IBM and two of us from academia who are guiding these students, and we keep discussing interesting work to do every few days. With this, I would like to end the talk, and we would be welcome to have any chat after the talk when this gets presented, and we would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.